The Watership Down Podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There will be spoilers. This episode is scripted, narrated, recorded and edited by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down Podcast episode 220, in which we will be going through Chapter 11 of the graphic novel, The Shining Wire. Very annoyingly, at the time of recording, the episodes that I said were missing from the Spotify feed are still not there. These are episodes 5, 6, 8, 13, 15, 20, 22, 23, 25 and 30 to 32. Even more annoyingly, episode 13 was the one in which I originally dealt with the equivalent of this episode's chapter when going through the original novel. I will keep you posted on any progress with this. Please be aware that this episode contains some distressing content, particularly at the end, for which there will be a warning. The graphic novel, Chapter 11, The Shining Wire. Chapter 11 of the graphic novel has 13 pages and covers all but the first 2 pages of Chapter 17, The Shining Wire, from the original novel, which also has 13 pages, meaning that this chapter takes 2 pages more than the original to tell the same part of the story. You may have noticed the way I phrased the above has changed in this episode. I will explain this properly next time. It is night time. A waning crescent moon hangs in the sky, indicating the time before dawn. Hazel and Bigwig run past poppies. They reach the yew tree where Fiver was found previously, but he is not there. Hazel spots him further off at Silflay. As they arrive at his side, Fiver looks back nervously. Then he says very simply that he is going now, and feels very sad. Hazel asks him where he is going. To the hills, if he can. Hills that here have not been mentioned before. Bigwig says he won't make it. Something will get him before Ni Frith or noon, but Fiver responds that Bigwig is closer to death than he is. Bigwig has held his temper in check up to now, but no longer. He asks loudly if Fiver is trying to frighten him, comparing him to an insect. Hazel urges Bigwig not to be so rough on him. Bigwig begins to point out what Hazel had said previously, presumably as they were looking for Fiver, but Hazel, seeing Fiver's state of mind, has calmed. Bigwig is incredulous. He turns on Fiver, saying that Fiver is, as Hazel has said, out of his senses, and now that they've found a good warren, all Fiver wants to do is upset everyone. Hazel exclaims Bigwig's name, but he is not finished, shouting at Fiver that he has never learned to obey orders. He says he is glad Fiver is going, that he will be eaten by morning. Turning away, he begins to make his way back to the warren, saying he is finished with Fiver and is going to make sure everyone else is as well. He runs into some undergrowth. There is a pause. And then there is a terrible cry from where Bigwig went. Hazel calls to Bigwig. He and Fiver's eyes are wide. We see a hind leg kicking in the air. Bigwig's face, wide-eyed, terrified and upside down, saliva flying out of his mouth. As he struggles on the ground, Hazel and Fiver arrive. Hazel immediately says that Bigwig is in a snare. Only here, the shining wire of the novel seems to be copper wire, which makes more sense for concealing the trap. Apparently it can be preferred for this purpose, though the loop that actually asphyxiates the trapped animal is more likely to be made from steel wire that is harder to bite through. Such are the mechanics of this dreadful method of killing wildlife. He asks Bigwig what they can do, hoping that his Owsla training will be of some help. As Bigwig starts losing consciousness, his neck straining hard against the wire, his words float tiny in the air, not even worthy of a speech bubble. He just says, stuttering, dig, peg. But Hazel doesn't understand. He calls Bigwig's name with increasing urgency. All Hazel can think to do is tell Fiver to get the others quickly. He makes it clear that Bigwig is dying. We see Fiver run towards the warren. Hazel begs Bigwig not to die. His paws are moving feebly. We see rabbits running, led by Dandelion. Behind him are Fiver and Blackberry. As they arrive, Hazel says Bigwig can't speak anymore. He repeats the 2 words he has said and asks what they mean. Pipkin just says, "Oh no," in horror. Hazel turns to their only hope, Blackberry. He thinks. At the same time, Hazel asks if cowslip might help. Pipkin reports that Cowslip wouldn't come and told Fiver to be quiet and stop talking about it. Before Hazel can react to this, Blackberry manages to push through his lapine inability to understand the physics of snares, an inability we have previously discussed on this podcast as being a necessary part of the reality of this parallel universe in which talking rabbits cannot understand that Bigwig just needs to move closer to the peg. Blackberry realises that the wire is on a peg and the peg is in the ground. Therefore, in a universe in which a talking rabbit can still be killed by a snare, the only solution is to dig out the peg, which poor Bigwig had been trying to say, but was too weak by then. Silver reaches the peg with Blackberry and starts to dig it out. Hazel reports that Bigwig has stopped breathing. Blackberry urges Silver to hurry. Silver reports that the peg is very long but tapers. Blackberry urges Pipkin into the hole to try and bite through the peg. Pipkin gnaws at it, then reports it nearly through, though he is having difficulty breathing while biting it. He suggests trying to push the peg. Blackberry does so, and it breaks, the word break appearing above it in large letters. We see the peg fly through the air, the wire still attached to it. It lands by Bigwig's ear. A fly appears. It lands on Bigwig. In a large frame we see one of the clearest tableaux yet of all 10 of the Sandalford rabbits. Bigwig lies in front of them, an angry red line along his neck. Very clearly a dead rabbit. It is almost like a Renaissance painting of a brutal mythical event. Blackberry closes his eyes. Dandelion and Hazel look on. Tearfully, Hazel turns to Blackberry and says those immortal words, "My heart has joined the 1,000, for my friend stopped running today." It is said as a statement, not as a prayer. Blackberry asks what they will do without him. Hazel snaps into leadership mode by saying they must stay alive. He clarifies with Pipkin what Cowslip said. Pipkin recounts the rabbits of Cowslip's warren pretending not to hear Fiver, to which Blackberry adds that more than one rabbit struck Five when he persisted. We see shaky writing at the bottom of this frame, in a kind of jagged banner. At first it doesn't register as speech at all, as it wouldn't in reality. The words are, "I'll kill him." Hazel looks back, wondering who said this. Bigwig, in a dreadful state, walks into shot. He tells them to help him get the stinking wire off his neck. Hazel shouts his name in surprise, but Bigwig just says he is going to kill Cowslip. Saliva flecks his face. Flies still buzz around him. His eye shows pure rage. Silver joins in with this sentiment, saying they should throw them out of their warren for leaving Bigwig to die. Blackberry adds that they should go back to the warren and kill them. Bigwig, hooking the wire away from his neck, says they will take their warren. But Fiver is rearing up, his eyes wider than we have yet seen them, with something other than fear. At the sight of him, Pipkin cowers on the ground. Fiver seems to become larger than all of them somehow, as he exclaims the terrible phrase, "O Emblia Frith," meaning stinking God. He looms over them as he says that they are fools. The warren is a death hole. It is snared everywhere. His voice slightly calming, he tells Dandelion that he has a tale to tell. And he tells it over a whole page of 12 frames. 1 in every 3 show the reactions to his words, swapping from left to right, as Fiver's eyes dart both ways as well. He tells of a warren that a farmer decided to use for food rather than keep rabbits in hutches. Of him killing all a lill and putting out food to keep the rabbits big and healthy. Of the rabbits of the warren all going along with this horrible bargain in exchange for an easy life, at least for as long as you avoided the snares. Of them not telling these newcomers of the danger, as it meant they could live a little longer. Of eventually having no chief rabbit, as there was no point. Of forgetting the tales of Alacrera's tricks, as they no longer had any need of them, for who wants to hear of brave deeds when you are ashamed of your own? As he finishes with the stupidity of taking over such a place of misery and death, we see all 10 rabbits again in tableau, only this time Fiver is at the centre. Bigwig asks him what they should do. For now, Fiver is firmly in charge. He says they should go. Now. Pipkin asks where. And in a moment that has always bypassed me before, as in the novel, it is Hazel, not Fiver, who answers, "To the hills." Yet this is a Hazel who has not had that idea implanted in his head on the common by Fiver. It almost becomes wholly his idea here, one with which Fiver instantly agrees. They begin to leave. But there is more. A rabbit who is Speedwell in the novel, but maybe Acorn here, notices a rabbit is following them. It is Strawberry, and he isn't smiling anymore. Bigwig says he looks miserable. Acorn adds that he's probably never had to go this far, that, as large as these rabbits are, they cannot fend for themselves. Strawberry looks at them plaintively and begs to go with them, but Bigwig says they should just kill him for deceiving them. Strawberry closes his eyes in shame. He looks up, his face a picture of misery. He just says, "The wires, I can no longer." Hazel tells him to say no more. He can come with them. And they all leave for the hills. We see a magpie looking down at the ground. It lands and finds nothing but a broken wooden peg attached to a length of wire. Comparison with the book. In the novel, Hazel and Bigwig force Fiver underground for a second time after he bolts from the Great Burrow, and he spends at least part of a second night there. Here, as in the 1978 film, he never returns to the Warren, except to fetch everyone when Bigwig is snared. The conversation between Hazel, Bigwig and Fiver is a good summary of that from the novel, except that Hazel does not offer to go a little way with Fiver, which is what really makes Bigwig lose his temper in the original, at the thought of Hazel, one of the best rabbits they've got, risking his life in that way. Bigwig's advice here, once snared, does not even mention not biting the wire, as in the novel. He just manages to mention digging the peg. In the novel, the peg diggers who save Bigwig are Hazel, then Silver, Buckthorn, who reports the peg tapering, then the smaller Pipkin, and finally Fiver. Here they are just Silver and Pipkin. Pipkin is also granted a bit more intelligence here than in the original, with his suggestion to push the peg, and when the peg is out, and Bigwig apparently dead, Hazel doesn't use having a go at Pipkin as a distraction, as he does in the novel. He just asks about what Cowslip said, and Blackberry adds that the rabbits eventually struck Fiver, as opposed to the single ear scratch from Cowslip Pipkin reports in the novel. The condemnation of the rabbits of Cowslip's Warren is summarised after Silver to just Blackberry and Bigwig, adding more, rather than the chorus of the novel. Fiver's tale of the Warren of the Snares is shorter than the original, but no less effective, though he does not make explicit reference to never ever asking where anyone was. And it is Pipkin, rather than Bigwig, who asks where they should go. In the novel, Speedwell notices Strawberry following them first, but here there is no Speedwell. Also in the novel, it is Silver who taunts Strawberry to go back to his mate, Nildro Hayne, provoking the traumatised reaction of one who has lost their mate to the shining wire. But here, Strawberry is just traumatised anyway, and is able to add the words "I can no longer" to the simple phrase from the novel, "The Wires," that hints at the fate of Nildro Hayne. Finally, the inclusion of the magpie finding the discarded snare lying in the grass is a fitting way to end part 1 of our story that shows respect for the original. Summary of Part 1. And so we've reached the end of Part 1 of the graphic novel of Watership Down, The Journey. Broadly speaking, it has dealt with the action in comparable detail to the first part of the novel, with the notable exception of the Warren of the Snares. A particular highlight for me was the way Fiver's vision at Sandalford was portrayed, and I was very glad to see the crow attack being included. On first reading, I was absolutely hooked by the end of Part 1, knowing what was to come. For our rabbit companions are about to reach that famous down the novel was named after. But before we get to that, something more needs to be said about the chapter we have just looked at. Snares in the UK. You may want to skip the remainder of this episode if you are at all sensitive, but I make no apology for the inclusion of what follows. Unbelievably, free-running snares remain legal to this day in England and Northern Ireland, also known as the North of Ireland. though self-locking snares are illegal throughout the UK and all snares are banned in Scotland and Wales. At the time of recording, proposed legislation for a complete ban on snares in England is at a consultation stage, with a ban expected to go through in 2027. As so often, England lags behind more enlightened parts of our nation. In England, at present, snares legally have to be checked once a day and can only be used to control rabbits and foxes. It is also illegal to place them where they will catch non-target species, and they are meant to also include a stop to prevent them tightening beyond a certain limit. However, none of the above would have helped Bigwig in the late 1960s, as he was trapped in a free-running snare with no stop, which, while it nearly killed him, in his panic, did mean that he was eventually able to free himself after losing consciousness, just in time to prevent his own strength from potentially breaking his neck. Also, none of the above helped the dog that was very nearly killed on the Sussex Downs less than 30 miles from where I live in April last year, 2025. The dog was apparently also lucky not to lose its sight. The National Anti-Snaring campaign is based in Sussex, where I live, which is very sadly one of the main parts of the UK where snaring is still used. They have also informed me, after I got in touch about this episode, that Watership Down itself has been a known snaring site. Very distressingly, they have also shared with me information about an experiment that took place in 2008 for the UK Department of Farming and Rural Affairs to see how long a snare of the kind Bigwig was caught in can take to kill a rabbit or a fox. I have verified this information personally. It can be found in the relevant document if you search the term, quote, "determining the extent of use and humaneness of snares in England and Wales," end quote. The highly distressing details, if you can bear to read them, are in section 9.6, Appendix F. There will be a link in the notes. Although the morality of such experiments escapes me, I feel it is only right to report that it took one rabbit 17 hours to die. The website of the National Anti-Snaring campaign can be found at antisnaring.org.uk. I will include full details in the notes, and I urge you to make a donation to this important campaign that continues to press for a complete ban on snares and other cruel traps throughout the UK. Although a complete ban is proposed, one suspects that there will be powerful voices speaking out against it, so the campaign for a ban need all the support they can get. Next time, the rabbits arrive on Watership Down.